howdy bosses, managers, and other people up in the near management leadership. Today we have James Waugh, OG build out builder, breaking down the social graph with groups and GitBOS. And I know what you're thinking. Groups on the social DB? GitBOS? What are those? James is about to answer that in the next hour. Yeah, get out of here.
Let's go. Thank you very much, Shot, and a warm welcome to everyone who is watching. Thank you for being here. And I just wanted to quickly run through our BOS developer environment and the APIs you have in the environment out of the box. And what we're going to do today is really focused on this social API, which you see here among these four custom objects, including the state API, which has some cool new updates, and the near API for talking to near contracts outside of the social database, which is our very special contract that we use for all kinds of things on the blockchain operating system. So what we're looking at today is the social API, and in particular, this index feature. So what we're going to review is two different use cases for these social APIs. And the documentation outlines exactly how to use them in general. But let's dive in, because this is all about a code review. And I just wanted to zoom out a little bit and give a shout out, to our awesome graph for the NDC elections. If you don't know about NDC, now you know. It's an election for the governance of Near and its ecosystem and the community treasury. So it's just a cool way to see who voted for who. And if you come in here and click on somebody, you can see who voted for them, and all these little blue dots are the voters, and the pictures are the candidates. So when I saw this, I was like, awesome. We got to use this for other kinds of visualizations. And I think one missing piece we had for the near social experience was, to visualize all the connections. So this, I'm going to X out of this because there's a lot of data, I guess. We'll go ahead and dive into the project that we worked on for ETH New York. And then we'll kind of rewind a little bit more and look at what we did for Boss Hacks, which is the groups feature. And then we'll finish by going into the GitBOS tool, which helps anyone make requests for updates to anything on the blockchain operating system. And special thanks to Elliot Brame, who's here and helped with everything. So he's building everything, and this wouldn't have been possible without him. And just wanted to make sure that's clear, because I'm just throwing out ideas, seeing what sticks, and learning along this journey together. So appreciate you, and appreciate all of you who are here, and let's build together. With that being said, this is our graph that we made for the visualization of followers, which is a specific group in the social database. So what we say, and what I say really is groups are not exactly things, but what we're doing here is kind of defining what is a group, and what we landed on is a graph that is actually stored in the social database. So the default here is the follow graph, but we can actually that we call the one graph, everyone. So this is just another way to visualize different graphs, but we're going to use the follow graph just to, keep it simple, and that's already populated because people are following each other. So this actually is a wrapper component around the social graph component that we'll dive into next. But what it allows you to do is add nodes to the graph. So this one shows, the followers of hack.near. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add our friend NDC plug.near. And now we have a visualization of the mutual connections between hack.near and NDC plug.near. We also have this other account, Every.near, which only has one follower, so you can see that one too. And altogether, these are the three accounts, which are the nodes and all of their connections with other accounts in this graph. So this is what we submitted for ETH New York, and we shared it on chain as well, and got some feedback from Eugene the Dream himself. And then we turned it into a more interactive visualization. So what we've got here is another version of the social graph. And what you can do is actually click and see, the mutual connections here. And then you can add more and more people to the graph, and it grows, and you see the overlap. These are like the mutual connections between all three accounts. So this is fun because now we can actually, kind of explore without having to manually input the nodes. We can just see who's connected and randomly click on whatever account stands out. Of course, lots of room for improvement here, but it's a pretty fun visualization that we can use for a lot of different kinds of groups, not just the follow group or the follow graph. And that's kind of a quick overview of how it works. But what we're going to do now is dive into the social graph component, start looking at the code that Elliot made. And the cool thing about it is you can actually have this code in here, which is like a component in itself. And that's where we get access to this cool D3 library, which is for visualizing the graph itself. So you run a simulation in this code, which kind of introduces all of the nodes and edges and turns them into this visualization that you saw. And what we want to get at is there's a way to pass messages back and forth from this code and the little block here you see under this constant, which is called the code, and the outside code, which is another component. It's kind of like we're passing messages in the same file right here, the same component data, the JavaScript that you see on the page here. And there's two components in this JavaScript, and they're kind of talking to each other using this on message feature. So this is a nice little snippet. You can see kind of like how it gets the message from when it's actually sent here. And it's actually, there's a few different places, I guess, in here that involve the message, like this one too. When you click, so we added this to enable not only a hovering effect, but when you click it, it now passes a message. And that's handled to set the selected account ID from the circle that you clicked. So this is actually the iframe that is embedded here in the component we're looking at in the code. So this is the message and on message is defined in this iframe, which is being passed back and forth. And then you've got the source of the iframe is the code. So these are just 3 lines to connect the code, which you see kind of in green here, which is defined. It's the D3JS visualization code with some interactive features, the clicking effect we mentioned. And then you've got this nice little use state where you have the actual on message being passed to select the account ID, and that connects it back to all of this code up here, which creates the nodes and edges. And I think Elliot will be giving a workshop next week, reviewing his code, and he's the mastermind of this right here. And I was really excited to learn more about how to use effect and use state on the BOS in general. And that's now available. So it's a pretty exciting moment for any React developers out there. It's just a lot more familiar to build on the BOS nowadays, given those hooks. So yeah, that's that's kind of just a quick dive into the pool here. We've got the shallow end maybe is just the the visualization that we borrowed from Eugene. Made some adjustments so that we're getting the data from the follow graph actually instead of the voting the contract they're using for elections. And so what we're looking at here is the paths to see like from all of the account IDs that you're passing in, like who's actually connected to them instead of it being who voted for who. It's who's following who. But you can pass in whatever graph ID here, and that's your group ID. So you can have a different group that's not based on the follow graph; it's based on your own graph, and you can create your own using the tool that we'll explore next. So here's the social graph component, and then it's all in this right here for the visualization where you can click. So that one doesn't have anybody, I guess, and then this one does. So we can go back and just see how it works again. But I don't know if there are any questions. I'm happy to keep going. But that's a pretty cool thing.
I got a few questions. So when you're doing this, just kind of getting a sense of like the methodology of how you began to look at Eugene's code and then kind of map the contract call for like the voted and to the followers. And then also when you're working with the D3 visualization, there is no like syntax highlighting, it's all green. So like how do you actually develop like that? Are you doing something in VS Code and transferring it over, or like what does that look like when working with the D3 canvas inside of an iframe?
Yeah. So what we were doing is just in the editor, adjusting it, the syntax, like highlighting, like, kind of error messages and stuff like that aren't very, available in this environment, but you can still kind of test it out. So when you want to fork, you can render here, and you can go into this and still kind of like check and see if it's working. But yeah, it doesn't have like different colors for the types of things you have in the code here. But this is like um, what you get basically from the D3 library. It's using that so you can reference the documentation. Our approach was really to just borrow what Eugene had already created. So the main things that we had to do were adding this handle mouse click, and I think just adjusting how the data is passed in. So the data up here is now different. Like we changed it out so that the data is from the paths of all of the different accounts that you're passing in. So the default here is your account, and if you don't have one, like if you're not logged in, then it uses this Every.near account. So that's kind of the main difference is the data that you pass into the code in the iframe. But there were some adjustments in here too, like the add event listener here. I guess selecting the well, I think that's pretty much the same as it was before. But the main difference was adding the click function, the handle mouse click, and then outside of that, we just kind of changed up how the data is actually pulled into the component and passing that into the iframe. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's kind of like the main thing that we didn't change is this code. We did a few small things, I guess, like trying to make the circles line up better, and I think mostly all of this would be the same if you go check out the code comparison with Eugene's. Yeah, this part is what's different mostly. So
Can you
you see
go
like,
into the social getter because I haven't done a deep dive into that. Like how many I see that you have like generate paths. Like I'm a little bit confused on like the what can actually be passed into that parameter. Like
yeah.
into this
So it's like it's got this, way you can map all of the account IDs that you're passing into the component. Um, so you could either wrap it with another component and pass in an array of account IDs, or you can use the default, which is what you see here. It's in my account, context.account ID is how you get that. Um, from the context, you get whatever account is on the page, or if there is not an account, then you just get the default every.near, and then so those account IDs are now passed into this, and they're mapped, and then for each one of those, we are getting you know a path. So this is like the ID almost, or like the unique locator of something. In this case, a graph. So we're getting the data of all the graphs um, of this specific ID. So like we're defining it as the default, the follow graph. But if we change this to be that one graph that we talked about, this is going to maybe not work, I guess, because nobody ever down here is not. But we have a star graph. We could use that, I think. Yeah, so this is kind of cool. So there's another graph where you actually star things, mainly widgets. And so this is actually showing all of the things that I've starred, and it's kind of designed so that you actually star each part of the thing right now. But it's showing that I've starred a widget created by Mob.near of a certain type, and has a creator and a name. So that's just another graph ID star that we're using in the path. So it's getting the star graph of all these account IDs. But in the default we had before, it's the follow graph.
So can you explain that right now? So like the we're using the SocialDB, which is a social.near contract, and you can basically have any type of data set, and those data sets are defined by a label. And the follow is what is your traditional like people you follow, but the star and stuff are like basically you set custom data to the star ID, or like is that so when we're using boss all stars, like that's essentially that.
Yeah, it's another graph, so it has a different ID. In this case, it's star versus follow. And one way to think about groups is just like your followers are a group, and your following is a group too. So the people that follow you, that's a group. The people who you're following, that's a group. And the mutual followers, it's another group. So it's really just kind of like the nodes and the edges that make up a group, which is why we think a graph is a good fit, because you're able to represent those kind of bidirectional and ultimately multifaceted connections. So it's not just one type of graph. Um, there's all kinds of graphs, and the follow graph is just the representation of all the different groups. So it's like you have your own version of the follow group, and that's your following, the people you follow. You're like adding them to your follow group, and then somebody else can add you to their follow group, and that's like following you. So it goes both ways, I guess that's the point here. And what we're doing with this is we're just getting the paths of all of the graphs based on the account ID that like owns it and controls it and creates it or saves it in the social database. And then we're using the social API down here to get the data, and that's coming from the paths. So we pass in all of these paths that are generated here as we map the account IDs that we want, and then we have the data for those groups or the graphs, and then we can use the state of the nodes and this like selected account ID, which is needed to enable that clicking.
So where does it come in where you actually like determine the mutual followers, or how does that display? Because when I'm thinking about like how to increment on this, I would like to see when I click somebody like who are the mutual followers or how that's generated. Is that something that's only done on D3, or can we extract that data, and like where in the code is that determined?
Yeah, so all of the data that you need in the graph is here. So like once you establish it as the data, then you're gonna like end up using that in the we can see wherever, like here's the data passed in, and then here's like the force simulation that has like the edges and the nodes, and so then you have all these links between them. So like wherever you see data in the code is where you're passing in like all the stuff we're getting from the social graph on chain, and then we're like using this iframe to visualize that data. So whatever data you want to pass in, you could filter it by something. You could, say, all right, I want to, see like only people who were followed after this day or this block height, and so you could filter it, but you would do that outside of the iframe. If you wanted to change like how the visualization looks or how it works, then you need to just adjust some of the D3 interactions here and manage the message that is passed from the iframe and back and forth between like the like outside component basically and the inside component. I guess it's not entirely proper to say it's like a parent and a child, because it's an entirely different component here. Even though it's in the same code, it's like this is a totally different component, and it doesn't know anything about the state of the component that we're editing now. All it knows is like what's in here. But you can pass in the data, and it uses that for the visualization.
So this is all in iframe. So like, can you kind of this is kind of a sidetrack, but can you like go into the iframe documentation, or at least like outline what is different about this iframe versus like traditional iframes you use in the wild, and then kind of like adjusting to that like development difference?
Yeah, I think that's a big question. I'd ask Wenderson from Satori what he thinks, and I'm sure Elliot has a good answer. I'm probably not the best person to ask, but the way I understand it is it's not that much different than a regular iframe. So I'm trying to find like where's the iframe documentation. So it has all these properties. We talked about the source doc, message, and on message. So this is really what you need to know. It's this is kind of the core functionality, I guess, for using an iframe in a component. Like you have these messages, and they're passed into iframe anytime there's like a change, and then you have like what happens like on the message being passed, like the data that you want to actually use in the call that you're doing on the message. So like this is like when you want to trigger something, and then here's like what you're triggering. But yeah, there's some magic in the VM how this works. Ask Eugene or somebody who knows better than me. But here's the documentation for using iframes.
Do you have any insight? Because if I want to like take an iframe from like YouTube and paste it right in there, it's not always compatible. So I kind of wanted to get a better understanding of like working with the iframes and limitations and things to watch out for.
Right. So iframes work the same exact way, but the VM sandboxes everything. So like something coming from YouTube usually tries to access the parent container, like because it wants to do some sort of analytics or it wants to make some change to the parent. We don't allow that. So you can only use iframes that aren't trying to reach out of its sandbox. So they can't be trying to use the local storage or yeah, or make any requests to the parent. Otherwise, you can use near social bridge, which does allow you to hook up with the local storage, but it still has like limitations. Like you cannot put an iframe on near social that tries to do some sort of analytics. That's just against it.
And then like so when I'm using an iframe, like what is a good way of diagnosing that it's doing that? Can I look at it from like the iframe embed, or do I have to like how do I know that I'll run into these difficulties, or it's trying to access analytics or a parent component?
You'll see if you put it in, you'll see in your console log, it'll throw some errors, specifically saying like unable to it'll say like iframe unable to do something because of no allow same origin or something like that.
Yeah, another example, I was getting an error that was saying doesn't know the state, and so I was trying to update the state in the iframe code, and yeah, like I'm learning. You can't pass the state like out of the iframe code into the main component. You can pass things into the iframe.
And also I kind of wanted to you alluded to this earlier, so there was an update to the VM a few weeks ago where use state and use was it effect were added, and you were mentioning using it here. So can you kind of, and I'm not sure if near.org added to the VM at the time. A lot of the profile pages that are on near social were actually broken on near.org. So can you kind of outline like what the main differences like with these changes, and how that's like why that's being kind of adopted into new code, and like how it's changing things? It's like, oh, if Elliot or you got the answer.
Ellie, you can take this one. I basically learned from you over the past few weeks, like how to actually use state and use effect.
Yeah, you can use both use state and use effect just like you would in a regular React component. And I know that he's been making all these changes where he's like exposing more of the web APIs through like through global state. So you should be able to access most anything you need. I know he's doing use memo and use callback right now.
Okay, so he's building
Yeah.
out all the like React hook feature parity. But so what were you doing before use effect and use state for some people who might have like kind of outdated widgets? Like what was going on there?
This documentation hasn't been updated with the new features, the hooks that Elliot just mentioned. But you would have to do this like state init and state update. So it's one of the main, you know, points of feedback we got around developer experience. It's just where are my hooks? It looks like React, but it doesn't have hooks, which are like a really useful feature of React. So this is the old way, and then the new way is like you'd have use state here, and then there's examples of use effect here.
Well, yeah, it was like it was almost like React version 16 before you had hooks, where it was like component classes and yeah, you initialize your state and then you update from there. And so you rather than using use effect, you just kind of like understood the life cycle more, I guess. Well, yeah, now we're like onto React 7. Now the VM has access to like React 17 and React 18. That's kind of the way to think about it.
got to go check the change log. Well, the limits are now kind of expanding, which is awesome. I think more people need to know that you can do this, and thanks to Elliot for teaching me how, at least a little bit. I'm still learning, of course, and I'm happy to help anybody kind of navigate the old state API, like, and changing it over, because that's what I was using that state API a lot, and being somebody who essentially learned how to build stuff on the BOS, I didn't have to unlearn the like React hooks. But if you're like me and it's new, I'm happy to help. And this is a good example to check out. That's one of the reasons I wanted to highlight.
And
what
do you have
Elliot built here.
do you have any insight on, like, so if my components are using state init or like a state update, is that going to be deprecated, or like what's the policy around that? And can you kind of outline this change log you spoke of so people know how to like navigate it and stay up to date with these VM changes as hooks get added?
There he is.
All right. Well, just gonna dive into this groups feature a little bit more to understand how you could create your own group and join groups, add people, and customize the metadata of a group, or just kind of describe your group in more detail. So this is a good example of that social.index here. So this line gets all of the groups that were indexed under this every index, and every group index. So we're looking for every group, and this is where we define them. And then this handle join is kind of like a generalized way to join a group, so you can use it for any group. And you'll notice this index right here, and how when you actually join a group, it sends a notification to the creator, the owner of that group, or at least in that context, whoever is controlling that version of a group, and they can decide whether or not to approve your join request. So this is a cool thing that Elliot added to make it more modular. Just wanted to shout it out briefly. I'm sure we'll dive into that more another time. And here's kind of the grid of all the groups that we just saw. So we'll go back to that and see what happens when we try to create a group. So we're gonna make a group with everybody who's here right now. And what should we call it? We're gonna call it the bosses or something. Bossers. Not sure. All right, so when we click save, it's going to call a different function that I'll show you in a second, but we can visualize kind of the data that we're actually saving on chain using the social database for the storage. So we're putting it into a contract that lives at social.near, aka near social, and here's the actual structure of what we're saving in that social database. And it's a randomly generated ID for this group, and it has kind of like the stringified metadata and the metadata outlined here. So we call it bossers, and it's using this type, which is a group, and we're using the every.near version of that. So in addition to the thing, we're also creating a graph, which is a type of thing, really, but it's different because it's kind of a top level ID for anything. So everything has a potential graph, and that kind of represents all the different versions of that thing. So in this case, we're making a graph with the members that we just added, and last but not least, we have the index, which does the every. So it'll show up in our social.index call, and it's going to use this key of group. So that's why we see it when we do the social.index of every group. And it's going to use this ID that was auto-generated. We're also going to notify each of the members and tell them you. So that's how we do it with the notify index, which is a pretty useful thing. You might have seen the update on push notifications, and I think this really is the crux of how GitBOS actually works too. So when we're thinking about requests or any kind of notification, it's possible to propose for someone else to do something, and that other account, it can be anybody, anyone, any DAO or individual. So that's just a quick rundown of the data.
Can you
And
expand on something
yeah.
real quick? So like we have our own, we will have our own graph under our account. Like in this case, like, so I'm kind of confused on like, how do you save something as one user to a global like index or a global graph? Like how does that work? I see it says
Yeah,
index.
so this is kind of the cool thing about using randomly generated ID, because it avoids collisions. Like if we name this boss, right, and it's like the boss group, then somebody else might make a boss group, and then there's kind of like a clash, or like it's unexpected. You might see members that you didn't add because somebody else added them, and generally you're looking at somebody's version of a graph, which is kind of like if you're looking at your version of the follow graph, then it's you're following. It's like who you're following. But if you're looking at somebody else's version and they follow you, that's a follower. So that's coming from a different group. It's like from their version of the follow group, and together, there's all these different versions, and those make up your followers. So like every account, which includes your account as part of their graph that is using the ID follow, that they combined to make your group of followers. And so you can get that by looking at all of the accounts that include your account and their follow graph. So it's a parallel. Like what we're using is, instead of the word follow, which has that collision effect, and the rule of thumb, I think, would be, if you kind of want those collisions, like you do want people to follow each other. So we want to have like a lot of different versions of the follow graph, but we might not want too many versions or any other versions of this like bossers group. So we use a random ID, but you can still go create your own version of this group. There's nothing stopping you from making your own. This one's going to be saved under my account, hack.near, but you can go and make your own version of it. And what we'll see is that it's actually how you join. So when you join a group, you make a new version of that group and you save yourself as a member. And then it's going to notify others in the group to accept or deny that request to join. So it's kind of like following back. So you follow somebody, and that's kind of like joining their graph, and then they can choose whether or not to follow back, and that would be like adding you to the group.
But when you're indexing the groups globally, like is there a membership or is it just showing an ID? Like what is the official membership list and like is it a one-way street? Is it a two-way street? Is there the original person who instantiated the graph with this ID is the source of truth and it needs to be accepted? Like what keeps me from like creating an all new list under the same thing and like this yeah, how does that kind of onboarding process work?
So it works both ways. You could have another version, and that can be kind of like a competing version of the same group, or together you could combine the members, and you see kind of like mutual followers. Like here's the the mutual group, or you could see the total number, like all of the people who are um, in the group, regardless of who is the owner of that version, of each version. So like you can see everyone's version of this group, including all of the people that are you know saved under anyone's graph with the same ID. So it can. This is part of the reason for using the graph, is so it does have that ability to represent more complex dynamics between group members. So you can see who attests, or like who approves of who else being in the group, based on their version of it. So we can simplify that by just saying, okay, here's somebody who is in charge of this group, and we can just look at their version. But we could also expand it.
Okay, so you in theory you could basically even have a global like registry or truth for understanding what it means to have that membership. Maybe these members from this DAO have this many attestations and that defines it and put it on the front. Like, okay, so that's unique. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's hard to explain, and we're still figuring out how to build groups. And I think alternatively you could have other sources of these lists, and really that's the kind of fundamental um, piece of the group. You have like the nodes, and like those can be uh, anything. They don't have to be accounts. So a group is just, it's like lists of things and the connections between them. So we can't forget the connections, and that's why we use a graph, because we have like different vantage points. So you can look at your followers and your following, and or um, your favorite things and my favorite things, and everyone's favorite things, or like depending on what you mean by that, it could be like anyone's favorite things, which is like if anyone says it's their favorite thing, then it's in the graph of all the favorite things. Or you can look at everyone's favorite things, which is like the mutual things that everyone likes, or stars, or whatever.
It
Um,
how is that in terms of development? You mentioned something very interesting. So like when I'm following somebody, it's under my follow graph and I can just query that once. But when I'm saying who follows me, I have to basically like look through everybody and see if they're like how do I do that efficiently? Like it does it take way longer to determine who I'm like how I'm in everybody else's follow graph? Like is that kind of slowing things down when you render these type of connections?
yeah, so like if you try to do it with the follow graph, you can use like the asterisk instead of a specific account ID, and you can see like, all right, like here, let's just go there for a second. I'm going to use the Explorer that Eugene made a long time ago. It's still really useful. There's other ways to visualize the data in the social database, like the tree Elliot made. But I think this one's good for what we're trying to do here. So like what we're looking at is basically the graph. You have all these different names of the graphs that I've made. So we have like this one. And so if we just wanted to see that one, we'd replace those asterisks and look at it here. But what we're talking about is the follow graph. So if we look at just the follow graph, here's a list of all the accounts that I follow, that hack.near follows. And so this is a way to see like my group, my following. So like these are the people that I follow. But if we wanted to see, all right, like is NDC plug in there? Maybe not. Sorry, need to follow you. I know that I'm following devs. I thought it was. Wow. Okay. Maybe I'm following Elliot. Yeah. So I'm following. Yeah. We don't need that extra thing. So we're looking at the data that's here. I think it was also the same for Hacker House. So this is an empty string, and that indicates that I am following. And if we look at devs or NDC plug was the example, I guess I'm not. It's a null, so I'm not following. But that's all to say that like we can see all the followers if we use the asterisk, and then if we wanted to say, all right, let's see who's following NDC plug.near, and we try to say, okay, let's do this. We've got all of these different accounts that follow you, so it gets more intense because you have to go into each one of their graphs and you're getting this data. I guess you can.
But that's what the social API does. It abstracts this having to query each individual one, and it does it quicker. Like how does it? That was relatively quick to determine that.
Yeah, but if you try to, okay, so here's what we're gonna do next. We're gonna break it. So if we try to see, yeah, it's not gonna work now. So I gotta X out on this, but what I'm trying to do now is get everybody right, and it's not. This is not working. So it works one way or the other, but like not both ways. Like this is breaking the page. So go back to this every group, and yeah, so we have got like a way to just sort of add people, which means like you're kind of like putting them into your version, or they can join, which means they're creating a new version that includes them, and it notifies other members to add them as a request. So that's like if we look at the code here again, we could probably see. So like when you're looking to see if somebody's a member, it is checking under the account ID, which is defined here as the one on the page or whatever's passed in. We have a default, which is this group that I made for everyone, and so we're using that as the group ID, and then you're checking to see if the account on the page added themselves to their version of that group.
Okay, so in this case, all the groups you displayed isn't all the groups on near social. It's all the groups under the hack.near account that they made.
No, so this is actually getting all the groups that are indexed as part of every index. So you get all the groups. We can go. There's another thing. It kind of just shows you the data raw. I think this is it. Oh, it's under down here. Yeah, so this is the plain and simple call to use the social.index every group, and then we're just getting the stringified groups data, right? So we're looking at every group right here. So this is the same as this call, and so what we get here is just like a formatted version of this. And so whoever created it is the account ID for that group, but you could make another version of it and it would show up like this one. So these are the same group ID, but they have different creators. so you don't have to use the same version of a group. But when we have somebody join, let's just go ahead and oops, this is we'll add you to the group. So you made a request a while ago, and haven't gone back and reviewed these until recently, but until today. So I was wanting to approve you on this demo. So this is like, let's just see the code really quick. This is like a notifications feed for all the graphs that are from this group ID. So this is like the default, and actually, I think what we were looking at is a different one. So like if we copy this for now, but we look at just the default group index, it's going to show a different feed because it's for a different group. So then we pass in the props of group ID, and then this is the one that's like prompted to be joined at the top of here. So like if we pretend to be another account, you know, such and such .near, and then well, I guess that's so the I'll stop. But essentially, there's a join button for this group that you clicked a while back, and that's why you show up here, because when we are getting all of the updates, we're looking for all the ones from that group, all the graph indexes, and it also defines this index that we're going to use in the item below, and then it's going to pass in this accept button if it's somebody adding you to a group. So this checks and like if somebody adds you to their version of a group, then you can accept and add yourself to your own version of that group. And vice versa, if you try to join, then it's going to add yourself to your own version of that group, and then whoever, you know, created that version that you're trying to join will get a notification, and they can approve to add you into their version. So, and then we want a notification whenever somebody creates a group too. So let's go into it and actually just click approve. So I'm seeing the approve here because it's my version of the group. So it matches up. Like I don't see it in this one because it's not my version. I'm adding someone. It's one of those two reasons. And then when I'm approving the request to join, like let's go back to just to show you that you've already added yourself to this group. So ndc plug .near graph. These are all the people you followed. I guess you've made a star. You've got some stars. And then what we want to do is we're grab this ID. So when you do this, I guess well, oh, it's vote plug is what you did. Okay. Man. Okay. So you've added yourself to this group, and so this is your version of the F889 whatever group, and it's got you in it. So when you joined, you added yourself to this graph, and then you can see, you know, like I guess that account hasn't. Okay, yeah. So you've got the follow graph, and these are all the people that account follows, and then you've got this other graph, which includes you. And then if we look and see about my version of that graph, it's right here. Like it doesn't have you in it yet. So when we go back into this and we click save, it's going to add you to my version of that group. And then it's going to notify you and say that you were added. So let's do that.
Yeah, it would be very powerful if you had kind of the different versions of a group kind of indexed in the same visualization, and then kind of combine that with the voter graph. That would be really really dope to understand. But we've been spending a lot of time on groups. We're like over time. Do you wanna
know.
go over GitBOS, or do you have time to do that? Because that's what I
I
really
can do that real quick. That
All
one I can do real fast. Let me say that what you just described, like, it's totally possible. It's part of the reason we built this. So, like, if we wanted to just see this graph, like, you know, we can see, you know, all the people in this graph here, and then the idea is that, like, we can remove people, and like nobody else has like a version of this that includes more than one account. So, or actually, let's see if we add vote plug. Yeah, so it shows you in this graph because you have yourself in it. So now we've like removed my version of it from this visualization. So we can see, I bet, like, I think Flow Science joined. So like you're each in this graph, but you're not in each other's version of it.
interesting. Can you add hack on there?
Yeah. So when you put hack back in, here's the version. These are different accounts. This is Every.near and this is iframe.near. And so it's showing these connections because it means that you're in my version of the graph and you're in your version of the graph. So it's like the followers, like you're in my following and I'm in your following. The follow graph.
Yeah,
so this works. Yeah.
That's interesting. If there was like something on the side that like would kind of like have like just like who has the most kind of connections in that degrees, that'd be pretty cool. But now I'm starting to get it.
Cool. Well, yeah, when you look at the follow graph, it's like, I guess we got to refresh, fix that. But like if we add NDC plug.near, you know, like this is the default is already kind of populated, so it's useful because we're all, you know, following each other, and that's kind of the default graph. And then we can have other graphs too. But yeah, let's move on. I appreciate you
What I was
asking.
confused about though is
Great
when
question.
you had the stars, like it wasn't people, and you had like different thing types. So that was like it kind of confused me to that because like
Yeah, this is still kind of work in progress, but I'm excited about it. Like, this is the star graph between us. Like, we both like Eugene's widget, or, you know, this is the widget. So I don't know why these aren't connected to you. We're still trying to figure it out. I guess the creator and type and name are connected to me, but not you for some reason. Maybe this is like because of some testing that we did, and there's like an old version of starring that is kind of messing with the data. But yeah, like it can work with things and, you know, people. But the things graph is still kind of confusing. So we need more graphs to like see how they work. Like, it's easier to test with the follow graph because there's like already so much data. It's like, I want people to all join this like this random group, just so we have a group where it's not the follow graph, and everyone can join, and it's just for like visualizing.
yeah, what I would
Yeah.
really like to see is for this, especially when it comes to post and seeing kind of similarities between post and like visualizing the post more clearly on the DT canvas, or even like NFTs like minted to people minted, or even DAO interactions and DAO to DAO interactions. Like I think that's this could really be used for a bunch of dope stuff. So yeah, thank you for shining a light on this. Let's get to the on-chain GitHub.
Yeah, man. All right. So we're going to use a similar pattern that we've already demonstrated for adding or approving members to a group. Instead, now it's for updating some widget. And it could be any widget, anything really, any data on chain using the social database. And it has some instructions here. I've gone ahead and done step one. So I forked this devs.near community widget. And just for demonstration, here's what that currently looks like. We're looking at the devs.near community widget. It's using a template. It's a whole nother story. But what we're going to do is send a request to update the code of this widget or the data of this thing in general to be the data of this thing, which is under hack.near. They have the same name in this case, but they don't have to. So we could choose to put in even this component itself called send, which sends a request. So the green is the code you're adding, and then the red is the code you're removing. And it would be nice to have a preview feature. I've noted that. But we definitely want to keep it simple to demonstrate this capability using the index feature. So we're going to go back to the community component. And when I send a request, here's what happens. It's going to save under my account the index of a graph, which is a request, and of the type merge because it's for some code being merged, or some update getting merged, like a pull request on GitHub. So we called it GitBOS because it's got this source and an update that are passed in through the index. And then there's also a notification which goes to the creator of the original thing, and it's going to pass in that same merge data for them to use. And I think this is almost redundant, so you could probably just use the notify. But
I got a quick question about this. Like,
yeah.
Since is this like giving a merge request for like, so say I get this request on it and I accept, is it gonna reference the code that is currently under like that is it gonna merge from when I made the request, or is it gonna merge the code that is the most recent thing under my account?
Great question. So it doesn't pass in a specific block height. So if you make a change after submitting a request, that will be reflected if that request is approved after the change is actually saved. So it's going to reference the code that is the updated version, or the data, which is an updated version, when the approval happens. But it could have a way to pass in a specific block height. It doesn't right now. But you could say, I want to get that older version of something. So it could be like, revert changes kind of thing, where you say, oh, I want to go, one step backwards to revert some change that I made. And it would reference the older version of the code.
And so for those who don't know, like, block height is kind of the timestamp for when the code was published. Posts are referenced on block height, components are referenced on block height. We don't have like semantic versioning right now, but soon someone at home could invent that and also improve this to have that as well.
Absolutely. So let me take a step back, just because where GitBOS came from is actually a DAO implementation, or using the Sputnik DAO contract system on Near, we have these function call proposals, which enable anyone to submit a specific function call or some action they want this account that is called the DAO to do. So if it gets approved by the members of the DAO, then the DAO account itself would perform this requested action. So that's how it worked in GitBOS 1.0. Then we realized we don't need that separate contract. And so this actually demonstrates social DAOs, which are kind of like DAOs 2.0 for Near and everyone. So you don't need a separate contract. You can actually just send a notification, and that can go to a DAO, Sputnik DAO or whatever, and it's abstracted. So now the action is actually requested through a message that you receive, you know, by looking at what is actually saved on chain. So you save this index, and that notifies the owner of something to update. And if they approve, they can automatically get any changes that are proposed and update something. So what we're going to do now, we submitted that request. We have this little notifications button. So here's the request index. And so if you remember, I submitted this request 2 minutes ago, but I sent it to devs.near. But we're just going to look at the request index from my perspective really quick, and we can review the changes here. Could have more information about what we're actually updating. There's lots of room for improvement, but now I'm going to pretend to be devs.near, and it's noticing that it's my thing. It's devs.near. This account owns the thing that is being requested to update. So when I click merge, now it's going to go ahead and save this code, which is pulled from the other version. This is the code actually. And it's going to be called community like it was before. And so we're saving a widget called community with this code. And all we're doing is we're just kind of piping in the code from the other version. So we save this. And remember, this is what that looked like before. Here's what we proposed it to look like. And when we refresh, maybe another time, hopefully it goes through. Still saving. Hopefully this works. Might be an issue with me pretending. Not sure. Okay, let me try one more thing. So what we're going to do instead is I'm just going to see if it works when I do this. So we've got a request now going to my account. I think we'll just try one more time and see if this works.
So based on this, you can even request to merge a component that you have not created.
Yeah. So yeah, you could put anything in either of these. The main thing is that it should be able to do this. I'm not sure why I can't just pretend and do it. But we just got another request. Let's see if this one works when I'm not pretending. I thought I did one earlier. Yeah, okay, so that one worked. I'm not sure what the pretending feature had in the way. But now it's going to be reversed. So this is what we want it to look like, and here's what it looked like before, and now we refresh, and boom, now it's updated. So it looks like this one, which is under devs.near versus hack.near.
And this is kind of confusing because we have a lot of accounts and we often switch to them. So like for those who were watching, he was logged in through hack.near, pretending to be devs.near to display the request, and then realized it wasn't going through because he was pretending, and he just did it the other way around where he requested the opposite. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I'll try to record a quick and simple demo that
I
doesn't have
think that's very
hiccup.
powerful. Like people don't know about the pretending feature, and I think that's a very kind of quick hack. So insightful there. So like what are you kind of seeing as like the future of Git, or are there any kind of features like that part of this like GitBOS framework that you haven't gone over? And like if so, if you can go over them, or if not, like what are you kind of envisioning as the future of GitBOS, or how people can contribute?
Yeah, so I just wanted to review some code really quick. This is kind of the secret sauce of GitBOS. Got the handle create function, which pulls in the type, the name, and the code from the new version. So you get that here. You got the source, gets the code from the source, or any data from the source, really. And this is the updated version. And so that's what kind of like it creates a widget, if that's the type of thing you're creating, with a specific name, and that's coming from the source. And then there's a new version. So then here's the data that you're actually saving, and it's really this right here, where you send in the merge, the source, and the update, and that shows up in the notifications. So then if we go, these are the requests. We go in here. This is another example of social.index. We're getting every request graph. So these are graphs too. This is the request graph. And so we're getting all of the notifications that request somebody to do something. And then there's this merge component that takes in the source from each item on the notification feed and the updated version. And here's the review modal, which shows you the changes before you make them. And so if we go to the merge code, we can see exactly what happens is it's the same kind of idea as handle create, but instead of you get the new version here, and so it's just like instead of proposing it, you're merging it, and you're saving it now under yours because it's your notification, and somebody else was just creating that notification before. So you're not creating a new widget when you send a request. You're just indexing that graph. And then, yeah, so to answer your question, I really think on-chain attribution will be the main benefit of GitBOS, because now you can see who is contributing on-chain to things. So you can see, hack.near made a request to update the devs.near community widget. And that's indexed for all to see on chain. Additionally, you can have a way to clone, just like on GitHub. You can fork a repository on GitHub, but you can also just clone it to your local environment. And so we're kind of thinking about how when you fork, it's going to say edit here, but if we go to like, this Explorer component, and we fork it, this doesn't do anything on chain. So it's just taking the code, putting it in the editor, and then if we try to save it, then it's going to save this Explorer thing, but we don't have any index of what just happened. It's all that happened off chain. But what we want to do is put that on chain so that we know when somebody forks anything. So it's a way to handle the on-chain attribution problem, or just attribution problem in general, because otherwise you'd have to rely on specific gateways to keep track of usage or this kind of activity. And cloning would be like, instead of putting the code in this editor and saving it on your own, you just go ahead and create a version, and save it while you index. So instead of forking and saving, you would just clone, and that would simultaneously create a new version of that thing with the same name or not. You could rename it, and then index that action so you know that somebody cloned your repository. And it's kind of the same as forking, really, but we're trying to differentiate from like what we talk about now as forking. But it's kind of more like cloning because you're sort of bringing it into your local on-chain environment, which is different than like bringing it into your local environment normally, from GitHub. But with GitBOS, you're kind of like building in the open. You're collaborating out loud, and transparent. Cooperation leads to better coordination. So we have a better chance to succeed together as a whole, for everyone, uh, building on the BOS, and beyond. So yeah, that's the idea. On-chain attribution. We've got the way to kind of see who's contributing where. Of course, like the default things become important. So like, who's going to manage these default things? Like right now, a lot of the defaults are managed either by Mob.near. Like if we go to the profile, that's his profile page. But there's also this near the root account that has a different profile page. So there's two different versions, right? And so they're both called profile page. They're owned by different accounts. We could make changes to this main one by submitting a request to update, and then this account, could decide, um, if it wants to approve that. So that's really the idea, is that we need more kind of like common ground where people are building useful, or like reusable and default things, in a collaborative way. So
Yeah,
it's not like, oh, here's my version and there's your version. It's like, here's our version.
And this is something we've been kind of discussing. It's essentially like, yeah, a lot of default, especially in the workflow for development, is going to essentially be how a work is attributed, and for like dependencies and forks right now. There's been a lot of different discussions on implementation. Yours was more like the moment someone wants to fork, there's an on-chain interaction. There's also been discussions with, because a lot of people they don't necessarily even have a gas when they start like forking to begin with, to actually put it on chain, and some code might be kind of too robust. So some people have been thinking like putting it in the metadata of kind of seeing where you forked from, and so when you publish it, it's there. Some have kind of looked at the problem and done it more as, or approached it as like an index, or like a code similarity, seeing like maybe which one had the first block height and how similar it was to previous code before. So I think there needs to definitely be that embedded into the workflow, or some type of solution. But yeah, this is a huge kind of problem. I think we're kind of brainstorming on ways we can like look at like attribution dependencies. Like stars are another one that you kind of briefly mentioned here, of like, how do we show what is being used, how much it's being used, how much is being copied, or how much infrastructure is reliant on a piece of component code, and even have ways for people to fund directly. I think kind of taking all these pieces modularly and like making a holistic approach will really help us kind of build a framework for like retroactive and actively funding BOS builders, which currently there kind of is no system, and is no main adopted system to track. So yeah, this is essentially like the product hunt right now, what we got right now, the all-stars that you made. If you want to briefly go over this.
Yeah, and I was just kind of throwing something on the screen. I know we've gone over, but you mentioned a lot of great ideas for the attribution. I think comparing the code is a great one. I think like storing the the fact you want to make some change and putting that code somewhere you don't have to pay is a good idea as well. I think it's something worth paying for in many cases because you do want that sort of convenience and automatic um, you know pull requests approvals to kind of like affect the main components, and especially if it's like a DAO managed component, it'll need to be on chain. And so like you want to see the like code and know it's on chain before you trust it, and approve it for the default component that you're using, and the community can review that without trusting some middleman to mediate. But it's a trade off for sure. Like maybe it's not worth paying for some things. It's just better to do it off chain using GitHub or something like that. I think a lot of people are using GitHub now for this, and we're introducing a new way because I think the comparing code it's good, but you don't actually have to like create a new thing when you index the clone. So you can just kind of like in a sense like it's almost like starring, which creates a graph. But it's an index too. Like you index the fact that you starred somebody's component, and that's a form of attribution. And then we could have a different version of that where it's like more in line with a fork or a clone, and maybe it just opens the editor and it doesn't save it already, but it does index the fact that you cloned it or forked it. So that's doable. But I think it's cool to like have a starting point. It's kind of like the Git commit history. Like when you fork somebody's repo on GitHub, it'll show like all their old commits, and that helps with like maintaining complex code bases, so you can see where it came from. So I think that's part of the reason it's kind of merging the histories of things, so we know where it came from, and it's not just like, okay, here's the code and then we have to like get the history from both places. But I mean, it kind of works either way. I think the cool thing about it is just that when it's on chain, then it's accessible to everyone. So that's a big difference from GitHub and other solutions that enable more traditional.
Yeah, seeing a global feed of all these requests and kind of seeing kind of like that element socialized, I think would be a great addition for anyone who wants to start. But this is also part of like a conversation that me and James have honestly been going back and forth about like when to use a social graph as kind of a registry and how permissionings kind of lie on that. So I've been in the camp where it's like I want to put everything in a registry contract. That registry may have multiple admins. It may have a DAO that controls this list. And I think from a lot of these demonstrations and the primitive that like James has been showing is that you can essentially create these custom graphs, which are lists, and you can have them updated or request them to update with a kind of single source of truth account, a series of accounts to show these relationships, or even a DAO and its social graph too. So this is kind of a different way of approaching like registry contracts and graphs and data sources and schemas. So yeah, this is very intriguing and interesting to see, and I hope a lot of people at home kind of take these primitives and really leverage the social graph so that they don't have to kind of build these contracts like I've been doing. So like, thank you for these insights.
Sure thing. Yeah, and you can go check out the code. There's these like pretty, reusable chunks in there, which can be adapted for any kind of request. So like if you want to request, adding someone to a group, for example, we kind of reviewed that. But another one would be like curating a list or something along those lines. So you don't need to do it with a DAO. You can use the notification system and the power of BOS to achieve that in a composable and customizable way.
Yeah, and this is actually something I like. This is kind of unrelated, but if you look at like drips.xyz made by the people who make like Radical, which is kind of a decentralized GitHub, this is exactly what they're doing. They're leveraging list and open source projects and kind of outlining distributions so people can kind of donate to these open source lists and kind of have retroactive funding that way. And so also TXYZ kind of checking these dependency graphs and then donating based on how much and frequently something is used, having like trickle down effects on the whole kind of open source dependency graph. So yeah, just some food for thought. Definitely want people to contribute to this attribution system. But yeah, way over time. Anything else you would like to tell the audience?
Just thank you to everyone, and thanks to you, Shot. Really appreciate you organizing these code reviews, and looking forward to the next ones.
All right, see you next week, everybody. Peace.
Bye.